Good afternoon, everyone. It's Chat with Mac. I'm back. We're glad to have you. Thank you to everyone. Let me tell you about something that I hear a lot of when I talk to people, and those are individuals that are already in the cloud. They have everything in the cloud, and they feel they don't need to do anything else. And I get that a lot. Like, oh, we're 100% in the cloud. We're secure. We got everything. Blah 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 blah. And it's like, nah, you need a lot more. Talk about that a little bit because I think there's a lot of misconceptions around that.
Yeah, so and I've heard this as well, I think there is a misunderstanding that if you are in the cloud, then you don't need to have the policies, the procedures that you would if you had on-prem stuff. Granted, you don't need some of the policies. So, for example, if your infrastructure is in the cloud, you don't need a policy about physical access because the data center handles that. It's, you're not using your own physical space for, where your servers are.
Yeah.
However, what you still need is a good policy and procedures around security, backups, disaster and recovery. And a lot of times people, they think for some reason that they don't need to worry about disaster recovery, about backups, about security, that this cloud provider is magically going to take care of that.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, when you have infrastructure as a service, when you run a few VMs in the cloud, that's like having, servers. Instead of having them in your office, you have them in the cloud. All the provider is giving you is the hosting of those servers. Everything
Yeah.
else is up to you.
Yeah.
Now, of course, if you're in Azure, then the Windows license is included in that fee as well. But the security, the maintenance, the patching, all that is still up to you.
Yeah.
And you still have to manage that. The cloud provider is not going to, for example, design your directory for you or magically secure your machines or back up your machines even. Now, a lot of cloud providers do offer backups, right? So, but that's a separate service. Some people subscribe to it, some people don't. And I've even heard, from management where they don't have any backups. They're just running servers in the cloud and they're like, oh no, we're protected because we're in the cloud. And I don't know if they just want to think that because if it feels better or if they're just getting wrong information from their IT guys. The experience with cloud just varies so dramatically. Some people understand it very well, some people don't. Some people understand your on-prem stuff, but they don't understand cloud. Now, you might have a person that you talk to that does stuff really well on-prem, but when it comes to designing things for the cloud, that's a different way of thinking. Yeah. Right. So you have to keep that in mind. Like when you design a server infrastructure for on-prem, it's just one location that you're worrying about. Maybe it's another data center location for scaling as demand increases. But when you're talking about the cloud, we have multiple geolocations that we have to keep take into consideration when designing, because there are companies like some of our clients where they have to be operational 24/7. So even if an entire region goes offline, like if the South Central region in the US goes offline because of a major outage or disaster, their operations still need to be functional. So their systems are spread in multiple geographic locations and countries so that things can keep running even if a continent gets destroyed. So that's a little drastic, but the thing is, you have to accommodate for those things what the business requirements are. The other side of the equation is companies that have simple things like Office 365, Microsoft 365, they think that they don't need backups. Well, you do. So, and the terms and conditions of in the agreement for Microsoft 365, if you read the fine print, Microsoft only guarantees data for 15 days. So here's an example. Let's say you have a user and the user accidentally deletes a file. They forget about it. After 60 days, you need that file that they deleted. Well, if you deleted it after 60 days, the file is already purged, that file is gone. Now, if you did not have another backup to restore from, it's done. There is no getting that file back.
Yeesh.
So, a lot of times, we see it in the movies where, oh, well, once something is on the internet, it never goes away. Well, once something is in the cloud, and if you delete it after it gets purged, which, Microsoft by default keeps it for 15 days, you can extend it for 30 days. Beyond that, it's done, it's gone.
Mm.
And if you need to retrieve something beyond that, then you need to go to your backups.
Yeah.
And that's what backups are for. And we recommend the backup system that we recommend, it keeps your data indefinitely. So even if your policy is 3 years or whatever, we keep it indefinitely. So that way we can restore any data, whether it was accidental or intentional purging of data, we can still go back and get to that. Keep that in mind when you're thinking about the cloud. If you have Office 365, Microsoft 365, you have email there, you might have some files in OneDrive or SharePoint or whatever have you. You need to protect all that data. Just because you put it in the cloud, that doesn't mean that it's safe. It's safer because they have multiple drives, multiple servers. So even if one server fails, you're not going to lose your data. But if your data gets destroyed, it's Microsoft only guarantees 15 days worth of data. So keep that in mind. And if you're thinking that just by moving to the cloud you've protected yourself, or you've magically made yourself more secure, and that's that's an interesting thing as well, because I remember when cloud technologies first came out, people used to think, well, no, I'm never going to go to the cloud because they equated the cloud to the internet. They thought everything was just out on the public internet, when
Yeah.
that was the farthest thing from the truth.
Yeah.
But it's just people didn't know. And now we are at a point where people now start to understand, okay, well, there are different levels of internet and different levels of cloud. And now they understand. Now they're starting to think that, well, if we put something in the cloud, then it's protected. It's magically just protected. Well, it's not. You still have to design those systems according to your business requirements. So hopefully that'll help some people out. If even if you have even the personal OneDrive, you need to look at some backups for that.
Wait. Even so, I mean, I guess I understand it on the enterprise level, but my files on OneDrive too aren't. They only have a 15-day limit. Am I
That's
hearing that
correct.
right?
Yep,
Oh.
that's correct. Yeah. So if you delete something and it's purged, if you want to retrieve it after 60 days, you're done.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah. So now I know, we can, so what we've done in the past, like there were, sometimes some companies don't want to have a backup system for whatever reason. It could be a cost issue, whatever it is. But they need to have a copy of the data. So what we do is we will make a replica of the data in their primary drive, OneDrive or SharePoint, into an alternate Office 365 environment. So that way they have that. But at the end of the day, it's just cheaper to get the backup, because then it's consistent. Your policies are consistently applied. You don't have to rely on any scripts. And even if you're putting it in an alternate OneDrive, you're still paying for that alternate OneDrive account. Now, if for some reason you get a bunch of free OneDrive accounts or licenses, then it makes sense. And that's where, sometimes we will replicate it into alternate OneDrives just to keep the data, because there might be a customer who has a developer license and they get a bunch of licenses from Microsoft, so they don't want to spend money with a third party system. But
Right.
I like the idea of having a third party anyway, because what if something were to happen to either Microsoft or OneDrive? Now, there is an actual instance that happened. Company, it was a nonprofit organization. Their accounts got put on lockdown because Microsoft thought those accounts were being used to attack other systems. And I remember it was a friend of mine, and he called me. I think it was like 6 or 7 at night, and he called me in a panic, and he was like, uh, "Hey, do you know if Microsoft's having some issues?" And I was like, "No, there's really no issues. Everything is fine. We've got like almost 80, 90 customers in the Microsoft cloud, and it's like there's no issues." Well, he ended up calling Microsoft, calling their support, and ultimately found out that Microsoft had intentionally locked that account, that tenant down, because they thought that tenant was doing something that was against Microsoft's agreement.
Mm-hmm.
So in those situations, what happens if there's an issue and Microsoft does not release that data? What are you going to do? You need to have it in a backup somewhere, in an alternate system that you will have access to, even if the primary system goes down.
So when you say alternate, and I don't want to take up too much time, but when you say alternate, uh, are you also talking not only cloud, but I know there are also internal like 5 terabyte hard drives where you can put stuff on. You're talking about that also, correct? Like
You can, yeah, it just depends on what the business requirements are. Now, you can copy stuff to an external hard drive, right? But that's not a long-term solution, right? I mean, you're going to have to remember to do that every day, right? Like, I mean,
yeah.
I remember customers where, it was a small, I think, small law firm in Louisiana, and Microsoft referred them to us, and they're kind of small for us, so we really weren't interested. But the guy's request was very specific, and he was one of the attorneys there, one of the owner. So he said, Nadeem, I just want to have an external hard drive and a system where it can just back up my server to this external hard drive. And I was like, so you have data on the external hard drive. What if your office burns down? What if there's water damage? It happens. I mean, he's in Louisiana, right? I mean, you're already below sea level, so
Right.
and his answer was, well, no, we're pretty careful over here. I mean, we're lawyers, and we'll make sure that the drive gets taken off site every day. And then he finally reconsidered and said, okay, get me 2 drives so we can swap them out. And I'm like, look, this is not a long-term solution.
Yeah.
You can make it work once or twice. Remember back in the days when people used to have those tapes, and a lot of companies didn't have auto changers, so somebody had to manually put the tape in and take the tape and take one off site.
Yeah.
And I will never forget, it never worked. It was one person's job to take those tapes off site, but tapes were everywhere in the server room. They were just sitting around, and when you needed to restore something or something bad happened, the person who was supposed to take the tapes off site could never produce them. It is a problem waiting to happen. Make it easy, go to a cloud system, and don't worry about it ever again. I mean, even so, like, if your company, if your industry has compliance requirements, the backup systems nowadays will automatically mount the images, take a screenshot, send you that screenshot, so you can meet your compliance requirements that every backup your system makes, you actually mount it, make sure it's restorable, and then you shut that backup back down. You cannot do that if you leave it up to a person. It's never going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to go with an alternate system. And we use a third party so that the data centers are totally separate from the data centers where the production data is. So for example, if your production data is in Azure, your backup system should be in Amazon or some other cloud system. If your production data is in AWS, your backup somewhere else, so that even if one entire cloud environment or company goes out of business, even if they don't go out of business, but for some reason they block your account, maybe they think you owe them more money and they block your account. You don't lose your data. You still have access to your data.
I remember that. Yeah. It's a
For
lot.
business continuity, it's imperative that you have a third-party backup. And if you have any kind of requirements for compliance, most compliance, which are NIST based, they're going to require an alternate system anyway, an air-gapped system, right? So you need to have something like that in place where it's, you just backing up to USB drives is not a backup solution. And
Hope
and
people are
and
still
and since
doing
we're
that.
talking about backups and you brought up USB drives, I know we're already more than 15 minutes into it, but let me just say this. People think that if you copy data onto a hard drive and you unplug that drive and put it in a safety deposit box, that 100 years later you can go and mount that drive and still get access to that. It does not work like that. It is not going to work. When drives are plugged into and powered up and plugged into a system, when drives are just powered on, they do a lot of maintenance tasks. That circuit, the chips that are on that board on the drive, if you notice, that's there for a reason. It's not there just for show, right?
Yeah.
Those drives do a lot of maintenance when they're plugged into power. And when that maintenance does not happen, the data that's on that drive slowly degrades over time.
Yeah.
And people think, hey, in the old days, people had that firsthand experience where the tapes were a lot of times not restorable because it's magnetic media. Well, then we went to hard drives and people thought, oh, hard drives are safe. No, hard drives were still magnetic media. It's in a sealed case, but it's still magnetic media.
Yeah.
It is going to degrade over time. Well, now we have SSD drives. It is still going to degrade over time. Especially with SSD drives, the thing there is that all SSD drives wear over time, right? So every time you read, every time you write to it, there's a fixed amount of read and write cycles an SSD drive can take. Once you hit those cycles, that drive is done. And that's why, for example, if you record a lot of video over and over on a USB stick, eventually that USB stick is going to be dead. It is not going to hold any data because you've reached the read-write cycles on that stick. Because you're reading and writing on the same cells over and over and over, you reach the limit, it's done. You might as well just throw it away, get another one. So don't rely on that type of media for backups. Go with an alternate third-party cloud system where you don't have to worry about the physical media itself. Let the cloud provider handle the physical media itself, and you just worry about your policies around data. And that's the most important thing, is the data that we have. I mean, in this day and age, that's the most important thing. Drive servers, those are commodities, right? You can just go to any store, just pick up a machine, make it a server. That's not where any value is. You don't need to be worrying about hardware. Worry about the data.
Yeah.
Once data's gone, you can't get it back.
Yeah.
So hopefully that'll help people out when they're thinking about going to the cloud, or when they think that they're secure and they have good, reliable backups just because they're in the cloud. That may not be the case. And if you need help, if you don't know what kind of systems you have, reach out to us. Shoot us an email. We're happy to help.
Absolutely.
And, for email, we don't even charge. It's like,
nope.
Hey, we love answering people's questions.
Exactly. I tell them that. I don't think people believe it, but we actually like to help.
Yeah. So with that, I think we'll call it a day. Everybody have a great day. Hopefully it helps you out. And if you have any cloud system requirements, I know some companies where their data is just exploding and they want to have some lower cost options for archiving. The value for the cloud is you can't beat it. I mean, it's going to cost you more to get USB or external drives than it is going to put the data in the cloud and not have to worry about it. The trick is how you design it. A lot of people, they come from the on-prem world, so they don't design the system correctly, and it ends up costing you, the customer, a lot of money on a monthly basis. But if the design is proper, it should be minimal cost compared to even getting USB drives. So everybody have a great day and be safe. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.